There is a holy stillness in the early morning hours. The world is quiet. The noise of the day has not yet begun. No phone calls, no distractions, no demands, just you and the Spirit of God. You wonder why your eyes open at that hour, why your sleep is interrupted, not once, but again and again, between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. And your soul feels something you can't explain. It is not random. It is not your body. It is not the wind or the creaking of a floorboard. No, it is the gentle whisper of a loving father calling his child, because there are moments, precious, sacred moments, when he longs to speak to you, not in the storm, not in the fire, but in the stillness, in the silence. In the quiet breath of dawn, that hour, that moment, it's an invitation, a summons, a holy appointment. You see, when the world sleeps, the heavens open, and God does not wake you just to interrupt your rest. He awakens you to give you His peace, His direction, His comfort, His presence. There are things He can only say when you're not rushing, when you're not talking, when you're not performing, when you're just there. Oh, if only you knew the treasures found in that hour. If only you knew how close He stands in those moments. If only you knew how tender His voice is when the night fades and the Spirit speaks. He wakes you to heal you. He wakes you to reveal things not yet seen. He wakes you to protect you from battles you never even knew were coming. And sometimes, He just wants you to be with Him. No requests, no performance, just your heart, just your love. Do not dismiss the hour. Do not roll over and say, it's just a dream. No, my friend, that stirring is divine. That moment is precious. Some of the greatest miracles begin with an awakened soul in the still of the night. It is there when you say, speak, Lord, that heaven leans in. Let Him find you waiting. Let Him find you listening. Let Him find you hungry, and you will never be the same. There are moments in life that are far more than coincidence. Moments when time itself seems to pause, when the atmosphere shifts ever so gently and your spirit stirs. And it is in those early morning hours, between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., when something unusual begins to happen. You wake up again and again at the same time. You look at the clock, confused, maybe even a little frustrated. You wonder why sleep seems to flee from you at that precise hour. But it is not chance. It is not merely your body. It is not simply restlessness. It is the Spirit of God. There is something sacred about that hour. It is the time when the noise of the world is hushed, when the distractions of the day have not yet entered, when the air itself feels thinner, and in that silence heaven reaches for earth. In that stillness, the Father calls to His child, because there are things He desires to say that cannot be spoken when your mind is busy. There are moments He wants to share with you that cannot be felt when you're surrounded by chaos. He chooses that hour because He desires your full attention. You are not just waking up, you are being awakened. There is a difference. When your soul is being stirred, it is not for nothing. The God who created time knows how to use it. He does not waste a moment, and He does not randomly select a time to move. He chooses the moment when your spirit is most sensitive, when the distractions are the lowest, when your heart is open without even realizing it. He knows you. He knows how to find you. And he knows the exact hour when your soul is most ready to receive. This is not the time to scroll your phone or push away the moment. This is the time to listen, to whisper back, "Yes, Lord," because often what he is about to show you, what he is about to reveal, is something that will not just shape your morning, but your entire life. Instructions, warnings, divine strategies, deep healing, or simply the overwhelming sense of his love. These are the things he deposits in those hours. These are the moments where eternity touches time. Many miss it. They think it's just insomnia. They roll over and dismiss it. But for those who respond, who answer that holy call, they begin to walk in a rhythm with the Spirit that few understand. They begin to hear what others cannot hear. They begin to know things that cannot be taught in books, because what is received at 3 a.m. is not information, it is impartation. It is heaven meeting you, not just to speak, but to transform. This is the hour when God speaks in whispers, and yet those whispers shake nations. This is the hour when your room becomes a sanctuary, when tears fall without knowing why, when peace rests like a blanket over your soul, when your heart begins to burn with something that cannot be explained. These are the things that happen not in church buildings, not in conferences, not with microphones and crowds, but in the secret place, in the silent hour, when he calls and you answer. So the next time your eyes open at that strange hour, remember, it is not random. It is divine. The King is calling. He wants to meet with you. And when heaven knocks on your door, oh, what a beautiful thing it is to say, "Come in." There is a mystery in the quiet, a sacred depth in silence that the busy world has forgotten. We live in a time where noise fills every space. Constant talking, endless scrolling, voices demands movement. And yet God does not always choose to speak through the loud. He often waits for the stillness. He waits for the moment when everything else fades. That's why the early morning hours are so important. Between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., the world is asleep. The streets are calm, and your soul is more open than you realize. It is in that divine silence that God draws near. Stillness is not just the absence of sound. It is the environment of intimacy. It is the place where your spirit becomes sensitive, where the whispers of heaven can be heard clearly. Not rushed, not drowned out, just pure, sacred communion. And God knows this. He waits for it. He chooses it. There is something deeply spiritual about those moments when the earth is quiet and your heart is soft. It is in that space where he speaks, not always with words, but sometimes with presence, sometimes with a gentle nudge, sometimes with a deep sense of peace that answers questions you haven't even asked. It's easy to miss him in the noise. It's easy to miss him in the busyness, but in the stillness, that's where he comes close. That's where he whispers things you could not hear in the crowd. There are things he wants to reveal to you that cannot be shouted. They are too holy, too delicate, too precious. So he waits until your spirit is quiet, until the distractions have faded, until your heart is fully present. And when you are still, truly still, he begins to reveal mystery. He begins to unfold things that were hidden. He begins to shape your heart in ways that no sermon or book ever could. There is something different about the presence of God in those early hours. It is sweeter, it is weightier, it is full of wonder. You don't need to say much. Sometimes you don't need to say anything at all. You just sit there, and He is there. No performance, no pressure, just presence, just being with Him. And somehow in that moment you feel more known, more loved, more seen than ever before. The stillness becomes a sanctuary. Your room becomes holy ground. Many people say they want to hear God's voice, but they're afraid of the silence. They fill every empty space with noise because silence feels uncomfortable. But the truth is, silence is not empty. It is full, full of presence, full of possibility, full of Him. God is not hiding. He's waiting for you to come into the stillness so that He can show you things beyond your understanding. There are secrets of the Spirit that are only spoken in the quiet. There are burdens He wants to lift, answers He wants to give, love He wants to pour. But He waits for the stillness, when the noise is gone, when the phone is set down, when the distractions are silenced. Your heart becomes a canvas, and He begins to paint. He begins to write His truth on your soul. He begins to mend what was broken, to strengthen what was weak, to remind you who you are in Him. That's what happens in the stillness. So when you find yourself awake in those sacred hours and the world is silent, don't rush back to sleep. Don't reach for distraction. Just be still. Let your heart listen, because it's in the quiet, in the calm, in the hush of the morning that God speaks most clearly and most tenderly. When God wakes you between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., it is never just to interrupt your sleep. It is because heaven is trying to release something into your life. These moments are not accidents, they are divine appointments. There is something waiting for you in that hour. Not a burden, but a blessing. Not another task, but a spiritual deposit. God is trying to give you something your soul desperately needs. In the natural, we think sleep is being taken from us, but in the spirit, something far greater is being offered. He wakes you to impart peace when your heart has been heavy. He wakes you to pour strength into places that have felt weary. He wakes you to speak clarity into confusion. And sometimes He wakes you to reveal something about your future, something about a decision, something about yourself. These are not empty moments. They are moments pregnant with purpose. There are certain things God cannot release into a crowded, noisy space. The busyness of your day, the demands of your schedule, the constant pull of responsibilities, they often block what He's trying to place in your spirit. But when He wakes you in the night, when everything is still, your spirit is more open. You're not planning, you're not performing, you're just present. And in that openness, He begins to pour. You may not always feel it in the moment. Sometimes you'll sit in silence and wonder why you're awake, that something is happening. Deep inside, He is speaking to your spirit, even when your mind doesn't fully understand. That scripture that comes to your heart, that sudden clarity, that moment of worship that begins to rise for no reason at all, that's Him depositing. That's Him giving. And what He gives in those moments will carry you through battles, decisions, and seasons you haven't even walked into yet. There are prayers you don't even know to pray. But He does. So he calls you early. He positions you before the enemy has a chance to move. He reveals what needs to be broken, what needs to be released, what needs to be healed. He places wisdom into your spirit that no one else could give. And sometimes he simply pours love, a deep, overwhelming love that reminds you, you are not forgotten. You are not alone. You are seen. There are gifts of the Spirit that are stirred in those hours. A prophetic word, a dream, a sudden intercession, a vision. These things are not just spiritual theatrics. They are sacred impartations, tools for your calling, weapons for your warfare, oil for your lamp. What God places in you during those quiet, early hours may seem small at first, but it will grow. It will produce fruit. It will prepare you for doors he's about to open. You don't have to strive for it. You don't have to earn it. You just have to show up. When he wakes you, come. When he stirs your heart, respond, because what he's about to place in you is holy. It is meant to go with you, to stay in you, to shape you. So don't see it as sleep lost. See it as glory gained, as wisdom received, as peace restored, because when God wakes you at that hour, he comes with hands full. He's ready to give, ready to pour, ready to shift something in your life, that if you say yes, if you meet him in that moment, you'll never leave empty. Sometimes we think God only meets us when we come with a list, when we have needs, requests, or spiritual goals to accomplish. We believe that prayer is only powerful when we are declaring, interceding, or quoting scripture. But there are moments, precious and rare, when God doesn't call you to do anything at all. He simply calls you to be with him, to sit with him, to rest in his presence, without performance, without pressure, without pretense. When he wakes you between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., yes, sometimes it's for revelation, sometimes for warning, sometimes for prayer, but other times it's for love. He wants you near, not because of what you can say, not because of what you can offer, but simply because he delights in your presence, just as you are. We struggle with that because we're so used to earning everything. I think we need to come with the right words, the right songs, the right posture. But he already sees your heart. Before a word is on your tongue, he knows it completely. He doesn't need your eloquence. He wants your closeness. He doesn't need your strength. He desires your surrender. He's not looking for performance. He's looking for intimacy. And in those early hours when he calls you, sometimes the most spiritual thing you can do is nothing. Just breathe. Just rest in him. Just be still and let him love you. It may feel strange at first. You may feel like you should be doing more, but his presence is not earned through effort. It's entered through invitation. And he is the one inviting you. Can you imagine that? The creator of heaven and earth gently waking you, not to demand something, but to offer himself, to sit with you, to remind you that you are his. No expectations, no tasks, just fellowship, just love. There is a deep healing that takes place in these moments, because the world has told you that your value is in your work, that your worth is in your results. But God says you are loved before you do anything at all. He calls you into that space, into that early morning hour, to remind you that you belong to him, not because of. There is a secret to walking in the power of God that many overlook. It doesn't begin on a stage. It doesn't start when the crowd is watching. It doesn't come through titles, platforms, or applause. It begins in the quiet, in the secret place, when no one sees but God. When you say yes to Him in the early hours, when the world is still asleep and your body is tired, something sacred happens. Obedience in those unseen moments lays the foundation for miracles in the open. Every public move of God is birthed in private surrender. Every anointing that flows freely in daylight was first cultivated in the night. The early morning hours are not just for rest, they are for revelation. They are when God speaks direction for your day, prepares your heart for what's ahead, and downloads strategies that only heaven can give. You may not even realize it, but every time you respond to His voice in those hours, you are being positioned for something greater. You're not just praying, you're aligning. You're not just worshiping, you're preparing the atmosphere. The obedience of waking, of listening, of showing up before the sun rises becomes the oil that fuels your lamp. When the world sees your light, they don't realize it was kindled in the dark. It was fed by your yes when no one was watching. It was shaped by your time with Him when there was no audience, no camera, no recognition, only Him. It's in those moments that your heart becomes tender to His leading. You begin to recognize His whisper during the chaos of your day because you heard it clearly in the quiet of the morning. Your spirit becomes trained not by noise, but by nearness. And as you continue to meet Him day after day, obedience becomes your rhythm, not a heavy burden, but a joyful response. You move when He says move, you pause when He says wait, because your ears have been tuned in the stillness. Then one day, what you've received in secret begins to pour out. A word you speak brings breakthrough. A prayer you pray brings healing. A song you sing carries a weight it didn't carry before. And people wonder, where did that come from? It came from the quiet place, from the early morning encounter, from the consistent yes when no one else knew you were even awake. Obedience in private births authority in public, and it's not the kind of authority that seeks attention. It's the kind that shifts atmospheres, carries compassion, and brings heaven to earth. It doesn't boast, it doesn't seek to be noticed, it just flows. Like oil that has soaked the altar, like fire that cannot be hidden. And it all started when you chose to respond to His invitation in the dark. This is how God works. He forms His vassals in the shadows. He shapes character in the silence. He anoints the ones who will come to Him simply because they love Him, not because they're looking for a platform. And when He finds a heart that will say yes in the secret place, He entrusts them with more grace, more depth, more of Himself. So when He wakes you, it may feel small, but in heaven's eyes, it's everything. Because it's in that moment that your obedience opens the door for miracles, not just in your life, but in the lives of others. That's how revival begins. That's how transformation starts. One surrendered yes in the quiet before the world ever sees. When God wakes you between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., He is not doing it just to disturb your rest. He is calling you gently, tenderly, yet with purpose. It is not an alarm clock that rouses your spirit in those hours. It is the Spirit of the living God. And when He calls, it is always for a reason. He does not knock without having something prepared, maybe something small in the eyes of man, but it is never small in the eyes of eternity. Maybe it's a prompting to pray for someone. Maybe it's a tug to worship quietly in the dark. Maybe it's simply the urge to sit in stillness and listen. These moments may seem simple, but they are holy. They are heaven's way of inviting you into divine partnership. And this is the truth. Every time God calls you and you respond, something shifts, something changes, something is released, either in you, around you, or through you. But for those who ignore it, for those who turn over and say, maybe later, they miss the moment, they miss the visitation, they miss what was waiting for them in the presence of the Lord. Because God doesn't wake you to entertain you, He wakes you to engage with you. To honor the call means to treat it with reverence. It means recognizing that when your spirit is stirred awake, it is not just insomnia or a restless night. It is an invitation. It is the Father saying, "Come away with me." And to honor Him is to respond, not out of duty, not out of fear, but out of love. Love that says, if you're calling, I will come. If you're speaking, I want to hear. If you're reaching, I want to be found. There is something so precious about the heart that honors God in secret. It's not about being loud. It's not about being spiritual in the eyes of others. It's about being available when no one is watching. That is what the Lord treasures. That is where the oil of intimacy is formed. That is where the roots grow deep. And when you honor that call in the hidden hours, heaven begins to trust you with more. The call may not always come with fireworks or visions. Sometimes it comes quietly, like a whisper in the soul. But those who respond, those who choose to meet Him in that moment, they begin to live from a different place. They carry a different peace. So they walk in a different authority. Because when you consistently say yes to God in the early hours, He begins to shape your heart in ways you cannot fully explain. To honor His call is not about perfection. It's about presence. It's not about how long you pray or how eloquent your words are. It's about showing up. It's about being there when He comes. It's about saying, I value you more than my sleep. I value your presence more than my comfort. And that kind of heart moves Him. That kind of honor invites more of Him. That kind of reverence builds a life that is anchored in His presence. So when you wake again in that window of time, when your eyes open and your heart senses Him, don't rush past it. Don't dismiss it. Respond. Whisper His name. Sit in the stillness. Open your heart, because He's only calling when heaven has something ready. And what He has for you is always worth the waking.